Hello and welcome to Ginger's Kitchen. I first want to thank all of you that have been viewing my other recipes. Thank you, and if you would like to subscribe, you push on the letter G, and I would like to thank all of those who have subscribed. Today I'm going to be making apple butter and pear butter. These are some amazing pears, red pears, that I found at the market yesterday. I personally haven't used these pears before, but they smell amazing. They're very ripe and they seem to be very juicy. So these are the ones I'm going to be using to make the pear butter. And then I'm going to be using a local grown Empire apple. Empire apples are just my personal favorite. Now I have 2 bowls here and I have a half a clementine in each one. And that's to keep the pears and the apples from turning before I can get to cooking both of them. I'm using clementine because that's what I had in the fridge, and I'm also using the clementine juice and zest in these recipes. I'm going to wash the pears and apples. I'm going to peel them, and then I'm going to core them, then cut them in bite-sized pieces so that they won't take too long to cook. I don't want to bore you and waste your time while I core the fruit and cut it up. So when that's completed, I'll be back. Here's the pears all washed, peeled, cored, and cut. I'm going to get the pears cooking and then I'm going to start on the apples. Now I used the zest of a whole clementine, but I used the juice of about a half. Now of course you wash your fruit before zesting it. And in the apple mixture is going to be the clementine juice, the clementine zest, some maple syrup to sweeten it, as well as cinnamon. So again, this is Empire apples, washed, peeled, and cored, and cut in bite-sized pieces. I'm going to sweeten this with maple syrup. It may not be sweet enough for some of you, and you can add whatever sweetener you want to it, but I'm going to use maple syrup, and I'm going to have cinnamon in here as well. And I wanted to mention, as far as the cinnamon, I'm using a ground cinnamon, and I'm also grating a little bit of a cinnamon stick in there as well for the apples. Because I'm making 2 fruit butters at the same time, you can find the ingredients detailed in the description, and I'll try to go over that during the video as well. I'm going to get the apples cooking, and I'm going to go back to the pear butter, and I'm going to grate some fresh ginger into the pear butter. Now, I used a little bit of a shortcut. I keep my ginger in the freezer, and that makes it a little hard to peel. So I use a ginger grater to get that peel off the outside, and then I'm going to use the microplane to actually grate it into the pears. In the pear butter is also the zest of a half a clementine. So I'm stirring in the ginger, and you don't have to use fresh. You could have used ground ginger. Now back to the apples. I'm going to add ground cinnamon, and I'm also going to grate a cinnamon stick a little bit in there. And I'm going to do about a tablespoon and a half of maple syrup. Don't forget, I have the zest of a clementine and I have the juice of a half a clementine in there as well. The pear butter only has the zest of the clementine. Okay, now back to the pears. Now the pears have the fresh grated ginger, probably about a teaspoon of that in there. I'm going to put a pinch of clove and even a smaller pinch of allspice. And then I'm going to put a dash of cinnamon. Now, in addition to the cinnamon and the apples, I added real maple syrup. Not a lot, probably about maybe a tablespoon and a half. And then I'll take a taste of them when they get closer to being done, and I'll adjust any seasoning if I have to. So they're both cooking, and I'm not going to waste your time while you watch the fruit cook. So when they're done cooking, I'll be back. The pear butter had the zest of half of a clementine. It had about a teaspoon of fresh grated ginger. It had a pinch of clove and even a smaller pinch of allspice and a dash of cinnamon. The apple butter had the zest of a clementine, had the juice of a half a clementine, had about a teaspoon of cinnamon, had a tablespoon and a half of real maple syrup. I used about 6 pears and 6 apples in the butter. Here they are finished. If you want them sweeter, you're going to have to add the sweetener of your choice. Thank you again for viewing, and thank you for subscribing. I hope to see you again in my kitchen. The smoother butter, I could have used an immersion blender, but I like it chunky. But the choice is yours.